The Wukong is a Tier 7 premium Pan-Asian heavy cruiser. It's part of the Lunar New Year event in 2025. It's on sale for straight-up doubloons in the store, without all the extra bells and whistles like various commander guises and camos for other ships. The cost of the Wukong is 17,500 doubloons, pretty much the same as any other Tier 7 premium wargaming has ever sold in World of Warships Legends. Of course, that's a lot of doubloons, and therefore a lot of money. So if you're going to fork over that much to get the Wukong, what exactly are you buying? Well, it is more or less a copy-paste of the Tier 7 tech tree French cruiser Charles Martel, one of my favorite ships in the game, and the ship that I use for the final game in every stream I do. There's a reason for that. The Charles Martel is a really effective damage dealer and a really consistent one, and I tend to play it at the end of my streams because it's fairly easy to get a nice high damage game with it and end on a high note. And this thing is sort of a copy-paste of that. It's got a few differences from the Charles Martel on its specs page. For one thing, it's got about 4,000 HP less than the Charles Martel. The HE shells also do a little bit less damage, 2550 compared to 2950 on the Charles Martel. And we've got a 17% fire chance on the Charles Martel, whereas this thing has a 15% fire chance. Both of them do the same damage with the armor piercing, though, 5,050. And both of them have torpedoes. But Charles Martel has conventional torpedoes with a range of, I believe, 10 kilometers. The Wukong has the trademark Pan-Asian deep-water torpedoes. It's only got two triple torpedo launchers, just like the Charles Martel, one on either side of the ship. The range is actually 10.8 kilometers with the Chen build, the Pan-Asian cruiser commander, who really is not set up very well to helm this ship. His skill tree is much more applicable to the light Pan-Asian cruisers, but he's at the helm for this battle, and, he works out reasonably well. These deep-water torpedoes go at 65 knots, and they hit for 17,098 damage. They've also got a ridiculous sea detectability range of 0.8 km, being deep water. The thing's got AA too, but I don't know, it's about as good as the Charles Martel's is, for whatever that's worth. Maneuverability characteristics are also fairly similar. I have Charles Martel, though, I think built for a little bit of extra speed, so I've got 34 knots on that. This thing is 33.5 knots base, has a 690 millimeter turning circle, just like the Charles Martel. And on Charles Martel, I actually have it built for double rudder shift. So I don't have as much concealment, but I have like a 4-second rudder shift time. On this thing, it's an 8.9-second rudder shift time, but I haven't found myself doing so much zooming around the map and kiting, so it hasn't been that big of a deal. And then the concealment I've got on here, well, again, this is the Chen build for the Pan-Asian light cruisers, so my inspirations on him are for concealment. I've got Mikawa and Swirsky, and that's much more for the light cruisers than it is for this thing. It's just the Pan-Asian line only has one cruiser commander, so it's either this guy, and I change the build for this one ship, or we use the universal commander, which wouldn't be terrible, but probably is not as optimal for the ship. So I've got 9.3 kilometers of detectability on this thing, but what really sets the Wukong apart is the suite of consumables. You can see that we have 3 of them, and all of them are on cooldown. In the first slot, we've got main battery reload booster, just like the Charles Martel, but that can be swapped for 2 different alternatives. One alternative is the conventional cruiser heal. You can take that instead of the main battery reload booster, or you can take DFAA. I'll tell you, after having played this ship about 10 times, not having a heal on it, if you're going to use the main battery reload booster, does kind of suck. It takes me back to the days of yore, when this game was only like a year old, and nobody played cruisers at high tiers because none of the cruisers, aside from things like Atago, had heals. And so you took damage in them, Well, you weren't getting that HP back until you went back to port and loaded into a new game. Not having a heal on this thing takes me back to those days somewhat. 34,000 HP is not a lot, and of course, this thing and the Charles Martel, they aren't exactly well armored. We've got 25 millimeter plating practically everywhere except for the Citadel belt. However, it's kind of a hard choice if you want to take the reload booster, which is powerful, or if you want to take the heal. I don't see any reason why you would ever go DFAA in the first slot, but if you wanted to, the choice is available. And the choices don't end there. This thing's a Swiss Army knife in terms of consumables. The second slot, you can see we've got the Pan-Asian smokes. That definitely gives this thing a different feel than the Charles Martel. With the Charles Martel, you want to be driving all around the map, kind of far back. You want to be weaving in and out, dodging shells, and just farming ships. You really are a kiting kind of agile cruiser in the Charles Martel. But the smoke screen here on the Wukong allows you to be more stationary. And, of course, it's the Pan-Asian smoke, so it lasts for a fairly long time, and then it has a fairly short time for a cooldown. And with fully packed, you get 4 charges of it. However, if you don't want the smoke, you can swap it out for a sonar with a ship acquisition range of 4.4 kilometers and a torpedo acquisition range of 3.1. Lasts for 96 seconds. Or instead of the sonar, in the second slot, you could take the catapult fighter plane. But why would you ever do that? Unless you're going to put Arthas as an inspiration on this thing. However, once again, the choice is there. For the third and final consumable slot, there are only 2 choices. One is the torpedo reload booster, which as you can see we have. The other is actually the trademark French engine boost, which gives you a 20% speed buff. I've tried this ship a couple different ways with a couple different consumable setups, and frankly, I think having the heal in the first slot and getting rid of the reload booster, keeping the smoke maybe, and then switching to the engine boost instead of the torpedo reload booster, that might be the way I'd prefer to build this thing, just so I have some extra survivability with the heal, and so I can do the same thing as the Charles Martel with the engine boost. Then we've got the smoke screen, which will allow us to play a little bit differently than the Charles Martel. But the consumable setup you see that I have now, that's basically the default one. That's how the ship comes when you purchase it. And so that's how we're running it for this battle. And we're having, fairly decent success. You can see that this thing is pretty effective against cruisers, especially with the main battery reload booster. These are, after all, 203mm guns. They seem to have the same bite as the French AP on the Charles Martel. They certainly do the same amount of damage. I don't know if the penetration characteristics are quite the same or not, but they are effective against cruisers. We've gotten 8 Citadels in this game, and we're on 3 kills so far. There's more to come, too. We've been making use of the torpedoes, too, even in some cases with the torpedo reload booster. But again, you only have 1 triple torpedo launcher on either side of the ship. So if you make use of the reload booster, you can get 6 torpedoes in the water off either side of the ship for a total of 12. You just have to turn, get the other launcher on target, then get the other one, and then use the reload booster to get all of them. Otherwise, you're only going to send 9 in the water, just like we've got going toward that Xarkun. And the torpedoes, they're useful. They're deep water, so you can't really see them when they're coming at you. But I don't really think they're the main armament on this ship in the way they are on maybe the light cruiser line. So I don't know really how much value the torpedo reload booster has here. Certainly you can make use of it. I think this last set of torpedoes that we didn't even use the reload booster for is going to end up hitting this Xarkun and sending him back to port. So how much value was that to us there? I don't really know. Maybe the engine boost would have been better, allow us to reposition a little bit more, maybe allow us to do the Charles Martel thing, I suppose. But then again, if we're not running the heal, well, we're down to 7,430 HP. We're in hard mode now, and it does feel sometimes like you really are playing this ship on hard mode. I can't stress enough how much of a downside it is when you don't have a heal. I mean, you can get one, but it involves trading out the main battery reload booster. And it makes sense, I suppose, if you're going to have a main battery reload booster, a smoke screen, and a torpedo reload booster at tier 7. Maybe that's too much and you can't be allowed to have a heal. Or maybe there's only 4 buttons on the D pad and one of them always has to be DCP. So there's limited room for the rest of the consumables and you're just going to have to make sacrifices. I don't know. In any case, I like the ship. It's a Charles Martel, and I like the Charles Martel, so what's not to like? This is also flying under a different flag. It's got different consumable options and different commanders. So it's Charles Martel with a bit of, I guess, Pan-Asian spice, a different flavor, you could say. In this match, which is not the first that I played in this ship, we're on the Epicenter. The enemy team has the center, and it's a 3v3. We've got 1 destroyer versus 2 cruisers. Or, I'm sorry, 1 destroyer and 2 cruisers on the reds, a battleship, 2 cruisers on the blue. There is the Udachi. I think he might have hit us with a torpedo earlier. I can't quite remember how he took so much damage. But this Udachi is going to be playing it pretty well here. He's got torpedoes out at the last remaining friendly cruiser, who is spotting him. We're hoping that we're going to be able to get into position and get some shots on the Udachi. However, he takes out the cruiser, and then we lose sight of him. So that's not great. It's just me and the battleship left versus 2 cruisers and the Udachi. The battleship, I believe, is a Scharnhorst or a Scharnhorst 43. He's not exactly the most threatening battleship in the world to cruisers. He doesn't have huge guns, but he does have a lot of HP, and he's pushing right into a Harbin, another Pan-Asian light cruiser with a bunch of torpedoes. Maybe not so good, but we do need to deal with the Harbin. He's in the center of the map. We've got 4 kills. A Kraken is up for grabs, just like it was in yesterday's video with the Jinan, only this time the result is going to be slightly different. We're going to send out some torpedoes in advance of the Scharnhorst, thinking maybe the Harbin would be coming around that corner trying to torpedo. There's the Udachi torpedoes in the water, and a series of planes, which I think means the other enemy cruiser is a D-7P. We don't want to be getting hit with any of those bombs. They probably would sink us pretty quickly. Udachi boldly opening fire on the Scharnhorst 43, but he's in a position where we can't actually shoot at him. So I deployed the smoke screen here, thinking at any moment the Harbin was going to be spotted by the Scharnhorst, and maybe we would be able to shoot and not be detected. Although the concealment when you're shooting in smoke in the Wukong, it's probably not that great. It's 7.1 kilometers by sea. That's in line with things like the Kutuzov, for example. I think it's got the exact same detectability. So smoke screen here is frankly kind of useless. If we did shoot at the Harbin, he would spot us anyway. But he's mostly broadside to us, and he doesn't have too much armor, so the AP doesn't have too much of a problem punching through the armor and citadeling the guy. However, the Scharnhorst 43 takes him out before we can secure our Kraken. Now, theoretically, we're going to be able to take the center cap. Well, actually, not really. The Scharnhorst 43 is pretty much dead. I assume he's eaten some torpedoes from either the Harbin or the Udachi or both. They can farm him down pretty quickly, so I decided at this point it was pretty crucial that we go get the Udachi. I don't think we have any other way of winning, and, well, there's still that 1 cruiser left, but maybe, if it shows itself, the Scharnhorst 43 will be able to take it out. It won't be able to take out the Udachi, though. That's going to be left to us. Of course, we can't use the deep water torpedoes against the Udachi because he's a destroyer, but we can switch to the torpedo indicator to see what the gray line gives us for the lead. That'll tell us if the Udachi is going forward or backward. Anyway, Scharnhorst 43 goes down. That just leaves me left alive with less than a minute to go in the match. So there's pretty much no hope of winning this one, but we can get ourselves a consolation prize if we get a Kraken. And you know how I was saying earlier, you can switch out the main battery reload booster for the heal. Well, you know, if we had done that here, then we wouldn't have the main battery reload booster to use against the Udachi, and we don't have it right now. Our reload time without the main battery reload booster is a fairly solid 8.5 seconds. And we have enough HP left that we're able to utilize that DPM to take out the Udachi and get a Kraken unleashed. Small consolation prize as the clock hits 0 and we suffer a tragic defeat. But Kraken unleashed in the Wukong, not a huge amount of damage, only 114,000, so, not a very big number, but the XP, 2,160 on a loss. Imagine if that had been a win. This was very efficient damage dealing to cruisers and destroyers. That's why we got so much XP with so little damage. So the ship is effective, it's fun, and there's many different ways you can build it. I don't think there's too much not to like on it. However, if you want to buy it, I don't know. It does cost a lot of money. Hope you enjoyed the video. If so, give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.